Hello, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here, Soph.
I'm so excited to be here.
For those that are listening in and haven't heard about your journey before, I'll give them a quick introduction. You are one of the co-founders of The Curve, a award-winning financial education podcast and platform community. You help women learn about all things to do with money and investing, and you are now based in London?
In the UK.
In the UK,
Yeah.
Originally from New Zealand. Thank you so much for being on, because you have such an incredible journey with your money story that you're very open about and sharing. For those that haven't heard it before, let's just go straight all the way back to little Soph's childhood. What was your first time that you experienced a money memory? And more importantly, how do you think your money story was shaped growing up?
So embarrassingly, firstly, thank you for the lovely intro. My first memory of money was stealing something.
Oh,
Which is like really controversial and quite problematic.
like in a shop?
Yeah,
Oh.
but it does feed back into what my money story was. So I think I was about 5 and I was at a birthday party, and do you remember those snow globes that you used to shake? And
Yes.
yeah.
I think they still exist.
Do they?
I feel like I've seen one
Right.
in a Christmas store.
Yeah, well, I mean, I saw one in the shop, thought that's lovely, and put it in my party bag. And then on the way home, I just will never forget my mum saying to me, like, oh, that's really nice. Are you sure that came in the party bags? And I was like, yep. And obviously, she would have been able to tell immediately that I was lying. Pulled over on the side of the road. I just will never forget. I was staring at, when you're in like a car park for a supermarket and there's sort of the tree and then the well. I was just staring into the tree well, and I was bawling my eyes out because she was saying I had to take it back and return it and say I'm really sorry that I took this.
Ooh.
And I just will never forget the passion I had around, like, I will do literally anything, but do not make me take the snow globe back.
I will clean my bedroom every single day. I will eat all my vegetables. Like Brussels sprouts, my favorite.
I just remember being mortified. So she made me take it back and apologize. So when I was younger, I actually have a few memories of stealing things, which is bad. But like being at a dairy, buying afternoon tea with my grandma. She used to look after us when we were younger, and there would be like rattling under my top. Do you remember when like the girlfriend magazines used to have those free scarves?
Scarves or like little charms, little
I thought,
gadgets.
That's a nice scarf.
Yeah.
Whipped it on and just was standing at the checkout rustling. And my grandma was like, what's under your shirt? And I was like, nothing. So the theme here is I wanted more than what my parents were giving me. And I decided to take it on my own accord to take the thing that I wanted. When I was younger, so I grew up, I definitely had a level of privilege. I'm not going to sit here and say I was, wanting for, I was really lucky. We had, my parents were together up until I was 14. So my childhood was sort of a classic, I was about to say atomical. What's the word when you talk about the classic family style? Anyway.
Like nuclear family?
Nuclear. I always feel like it sounds like atomic or something. Anyway.
Oh yeah, like nuclear explosions, atomic
Perhaps,
explosions.
yes. So I just grew up in this environment where there was a lot of comparison because a lot of friends or families around us had a lot and we didn't have as much. So there would be clothes that I would want and we weren't allowed it, or it was the classic money doesn't grow on trees. But I think simultaneously, because I didn't learn the value of money very young because I was a competitive gymnast. So I was like training before and after school. So I never had time to then work as a kid. So I didn't have a job and I was never earning my own money. So I was always really dependent on my parents. And I think that it was just this combination of not really understanding that we didn't have enough for what we wanted, feeling quite frustrated by it, but also not doing anything about it.
I mean, you were a kid.
Yeah, but even as a teenager, so many of my friends and people I know got jobs. And I would do housekeeping for summers or whatever, but it was never enough to be able to fund the things I wanted to spend money on. So I think I don't know, I've had a very checkered relationship with money, and I've gone into a lot of debt because I've wanted things that are beyond my means. So yeah, the Christchurch earthquake happened in New Zealand when I was in university. and all my belongings were stuck in the flat that I'd just moved into a week before. And then
You
all of
lived in
this,
Christchurch when the earthquakes happened?
yeah, I was at
Oh,
broadcasting school,
I'm sorry.
and I mean, I was really lucky. I didn't lose anyone that I loved. I didn't know anyone that was like directly injured. Everything I owned was in this house I just moved into, and a week after was the earthquake, and we couldn't get in to get our stuff out for a year. So I got a credit card and went and bought the essentials and went into like a lot of debt. So just didn't have the concept of money and how valuable it was, and it took me a really long time to learn it.
Did you feel like there was shame around going into debt at the time, or do you feel like you can speak openly about it now?
I'm going to sound like such a privileged brat saying this, but I think I should be honest.
This is a finance podcast. We're talking about money. Like, if anyone is listening to this and going, "Oh, this person sounds a bit privileged," it's like, you're listening to a finance podcast. People are going to have different levels of money. You can't.
I think, going back to the not taking autonomy or responsibility for the money that I earned and then spent, I don't think I realized the magnitude of how much A, money I'd spent on things I didn't need, and B, I was quite used to my parents being my fallback. I didn't have this. I've always been privileged that I've had the backup of if things go wrong, I can go home. Or, my parents have always said if anything's happening in the middle of the night, call us. I've been really lucky in that way. So my parents were furious about how much I'd spent. I mean, I bought the essential leather mini skirt that I just didn't need it. But I think that I experienced a childhood where I was always wanting what everyone else had around me and I didn't have. And so the moment that I had a card that had a 20,000 limit on it, I spent nearly all of it in 10 days.
In 10 days. How old were you again? 18, 19?
Yeah.
I mean, I have a very young brother, and when I think about my brother at that age, like 18, 19, he doesn't understand like the concept of what a credit card is. And sometimes it makes you wonder like how much onus is on the providers of like the banks and the providers of these credit cards that are like a child that can't even legally drink in the States. We can give them a $20,000 line of credit. Like, yes, sure, and to some degree the onus is on you. I won't take that away from you, but it's a big line of credit to give someone at such a young age. Your frontal lobe hasn't developed. That you go through that. It's obviously very hard. How did you crawl out of it?
I always worked in media. I worked in radio and television, and worked for record companies. I was always in kind of mainstream media before podcasting, before the curve, and I actually didn't earn bad money. I was earning okay money. I never had an emergency fund. I was not investing. I didn't know what investing was. I very much lived month to month, and honestly, it wasn't until the curve and learning about money that I started getting, out of debt. And I was in a lot of debt, actually. I ended up being, and this is including things like student loan, it was like around 50,000. I never understood the idea of the snowball method and all the different ways to get out of debt. And I didn't even really think about doing it properly until late 20s, which obviously is not ideal because debt compounds. I can now confidently say I'm debt free, which is quite
Huge.
insane. I mean, I would never do Afterpay. I would never do buy now, pay later. I mean, I'm in mortgage debt, but that's, as we all know, good debt. Really, I had to start from the basics. And that's where our podcast started, was because I was sort of 27 and I had got a tax back. I was living in Sydney at the time. And it was the first time that I'd had like a lump sum of money and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know if I should put it against my debt or if I should invest it. I remember saying to Vic, my business partner, who's the co-host of the podcast, and I called her and I was like, should I put it in a term deposit? That was the only term in finance I knew because it was all my parents had really spoken about. I didn't know what investing was. And then when we started our podcast, it was like starting from the beginning. I mean, I remember there was a podcast we spoke about inflation. This is when inflation was going crazy. And I remember Vic saying to me, if your salary is not keeping up with inflation, then you're losing money every year. And that was just like, I genuinely, there's this video that went viral on TikTok and it was me being like, why? And I honestly did not understand the concept of that, which is not to shame anyone that's listening and doesn't know. It was more just, I'm trying to give like context for how little I knew or how financially literate I was. So over time, when I started building up my knowledge around, investing and splitting pay and all of that, was really only when I started to use my pay in a way that was productive rather than just ripping through it month to month. So yeah, it's taken a long time. I'm now 34. So I'm now debt free. I have 2 investment properties that I've done with a friend. I have about 70,000 in the stock market, and I have an emergency fund as well. So I mean, like, I really have been in a particularly horrendous, I mean, you know, I was never homeless or anything, but I was definitely heading towards being a statistic of being in a huge amount of debt and being just kind of in that spiral for a long period of time. So I'm very grateful to have turned things around.
Well, it's a testament to you and your hard work and your like desire to make a change, because debt is like one of those things that exists, but it's not a physical object in your home. Like you can, if you do not open your laptop and you do not check your phone and you do not open your envelopes, you can ignore it. And that's what a lot of us will do, because it's just like another thing, and you have your head in the sand and you're like, I don't really want to address this. And like you,
This is going to go under a rug somewhere.
this is going to go in the deal for later pile.
Yeah.
But you've like obviously done such, just from like mentioning where you started, like almost $50,000 in debt, to where you are now with 2 investment properties and like a large investment portfolio and being debt free. There was obviously a lot of work that went into getting there. What would you say to someone that's like, I really relate to Soph's story. I don't even know where to start. Like, I know you've like obviously had the podcast, but did you work with someone to help consolidate it or set up a plan? Like, how did you start?
Yeah, how did I start? It's such a good question, because I don't know if this is helpful, but for me, wins, whether they're small, give me a dopamine hit and make me feel like I'm progressing. So as an example, when it came to my emergency fund, I only really built that up in the last year. And I, every month, would get really excited by the amount I put in, and I was watching it grow, and it actually made me really proud. I was showing people it was quite embarrassing. I was like, look at mine, like, look at it. You know, I was like, anyway, starting with wins, even if they're small, feels like progress. And, you know, we spoke off mic about your incredible investing journey and where you are now. It's crazy how much you have invested, like so amazing, but it didn't happen overnight. And I think that in a world where you do expect change to happen as soon as you get the mindset or the motivation to make it happen, you have to know things take time. It's taken me over 5 years, but I'm now in a position where I can be catapulting myself forward. So I'm really lucky that the thing that happened for me that made me really want to sit up and pay attention and do it differently was the tax back. And it was because I all of a sudden had some money that I wanted to protect and do something better with. I do think for a lot of people, there's like an emotional trigger point where you realize, whether it's you have money you want to protect or you're thinking about a goal, like there's something that motivates you to change how you've always done it. For me, I was really lucky that happened, and I had a friend I could call. So that was kind of the step one, was like, I don't want to flip this away or do something like I have always done, which is spend it on things I don't need and then all of a sudden not have it. So I think finding something, like some kind of emotional connection to money, is important, whether that's a goal. So for you, it might be, oh shit, I'm in debt too, and I really want to feel debt free. Really good motivator. And then it's breaking it down into small chunks. So for me, I didn't understand, I don't know how much time we have to go into this, and I know you have a lot of resources around the different ways of paying down debt, but for me, I was most scared by my high interest debt. So paying that down first was more important to me than the small wins, which I know is kind of counterintuitive to what I just said, but the accumulating high interest debt was what I focused on first, and just slowly chipped away at that, because that was what was giving me low level anxiety constantly. I basically didn't invest until I got rid of debt. I changed the tactic about halfway through. I started then building up some emergency funds so that I wasn't going to have to go into more debt, because generally what we now say is, rather than paying off your debt, just build your emergency fund, so then if something else happens, you don't put it back in there, or you don't have to take more debt. And I know it's different for everyone, but that for me gave me a bit of psychological safety that if something else happened, I didn't have to draw down again, because I was so leveraged. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to go into more debt because I was already in so much. It was kind of like, okay, well, I'll pause these payments, build up a little side thing, and then go back to that. So that was how I did it. It's not necessarily the best way, but it worked for me. And it wasn't until I got to paying off high interest debt that I started looking at. So I then had my student loan, which was about $25,000. I paused on that because there wasn't interest accumulating at the time. So then I went into doing a little bit of investments, a little bit of emergency fund. But to be honest, I don't think I've gone about it the right way. And if I was to go back in time, knowing what I know now, I would be a lot more methodical about it. There's a lot of shame that comes with being in debt. And it feels like this nasty secret that is like best to not talk about. There's lots of different ways that you can get out of debt. There's lots of people that have been through it that can give advice. There was many years where it was sort of just there and not spoken about. And if I'd felt like I could take control of it sooner, I'd be in a different financial position now.
But that's if you'd known then what you know now, but then you just acted with like the information you had. Like we'd all be doing things differently if we knew things back then.
I think probably the shame for me more came from the what I spent it on, because it was so unnecessary. Like I borrowed money basically for lifestyle from week to week, like $300 a week, when my lifestyle didn't need to be extended by 300. Does that make sense? So like
the living cost loans at university.
Yes, I had that. But I also I took out, like personal loans for things that I did not need. Just small ones. But I think ultimately what it came back to is I never learned that you should never spend more than what you have coming in. In fact, you want to be spending less than what you have coming in if you ever want to get ahead. And I just think even though my parents tried to teach me the value of money, they never learned this stuff. So the way they communicated it to me never really landed. And even if they were educated more so and could teach me, I don't know if I would have listened at that age.
When we interview other people on the podcast, or when I talk to like people in real life about investing, most of them will say like, my parents did try to tell me like what you guys teach, but I just couldn't learn it from them. And like my younger sibling will not learn investing from me. You just don't want to learn from people that like, personally. You're like, I know you, I've seen you like, my brother's probably like, I've seen you cry over like a stub toe. Like, what do you know? And so it's hard to. And I also think it's really only in the last couple of years that we've felt comfortable as a society to talk to our friends about money and about debt. And it's like part of what you guys do at The Curve is like making it more comfortable to speak on.
I think ultimately no one's really good with their money. Like you can get better. Actually, I'm going to rephrase that. It's not that no one's good with their money. It's everyone feels like a beginner. So even though I've learned about money for 5 years, and if you looked at me 10 years ago compared to now, you would probably say I was a financial expert that should be, running a country. Like, wow, she's come a long way with her finances. I still feel like
treasurer of the country.
But I still feel like a beginner. I still feel like I'm learning. I still have that slight imposter syndrome around money. I'm definitely much better than I was. You're never going to know everything. And actually just starting and implementing something is something to be proud of. You could learn about money forever and never do anything. You have to do the thing. I listened to this amazing woman speak in the UK. She did a huge study around what holds so many women back from investing. And one of the main takeaways I had is that a lot of us spend time teaching people the education or try and build confidence, but confidence comes from action and doing the thing. So you could sit and listen to this podcast or our podcast or read all the finance books and still not take action and not build your confidence. So I think, it's action that makes you slowly start to feel a bit more in control.
I 100% agree. And it's so hard to do because the people that fall into that category are usually the smartest people because they can see the pros and cons. And like the people that have made their wealth through real estate are often like the wealthiest people that are like the dumbest people. Like if you are a wealthy person and you've made your money through like selling a tech company, you're very technical. If you've made your money through like buying real estate and doing it up and selling it, it's not hard to do. It's just doing the same thing over and over again and having the ability to buy the first property. And those people, they don't overanalyze the deals. They buy the house, they figure it out, they do what they can with it, they flip it, they sell it, they do it again. They do it again, they do it again. 10 years goes by, they've like accumulated all this wealth. Meanwhile, like, smart Sally over here is like still trying to be like, how do I get the yield right? Like, how do I make sure that this is like, how do I make sure I don't financially ruin myself with this one home purchase? dumb Dave is like, it's just like onto his 10th property.
Funny that you say dumb Dave, because I sort of had this picture in my head that any man that worked in finance, this is so embarrassing to admit, but that any man that works in finance must be incredibly smart. I mean, have you met guys that work in finance? Sorry, I don't mean to sound like man hater, but some of them are a few tools short of a toolkit.
This is a man hating podcast. You're in the right place.
Honestly though, like you and you ask guys that have friends that work, like guy friends that have guy friends that work in finance, and they are not saying that, you know, Lachlan's the smartest or the sharpest knife in the drawer. It's really not hard to learn this stuff, but I think it's, for us, a lot of women stop taking, like they don't take the action or go and do all the things, and you get decision paralysis because you feel like you need all the facts, which I'm not trying to poo-poo, because I had to learn for about 2 years on the podcast before I did anything different. But I would just say, you may never feel ready.
Yeah.
You may never feel like you have all of the education you need to make a change or do things differently, but just start anyway. You know, don't go and obviously invest 100% of your money in one stock or anything like that, but you can start small, and starting is better than continuing to learn forever, because you miss out on either paying down debt or making returns the longer you stay out of the game. And dumb Dave is off flying ahead.
So you got out of debt, incredible. You had just your student loan debt, but in New Zealand, student loan debt is interest free. So it actually makes sense to not pay it off unless you've moved overseas and you have interest occurring. Did you know in Australia it's inflation adjusted debt? No. So if inflation goes up to like 9%, the Australian student loans go up 9% interest rate, or close to.
What? So they ride the inflation amount. That's terrifying.
Very scary. So it changes. It's like a floating mortgage, but on your debt.
Oh, nah. That's not fun. I mean, you'd just pay it down faster, wouldn't you? Because it's scary.
And so you paid down a lot of your debt and you started investing. What like catapulted you to take the action?
Do you know what? I started actually with active funds. I started there because I just wanted to get my money into an investment, and I still didn't really trust myself to go and decide what ETFs or stocks, or I just still felt overwhelmed and I wasn't making a decision, and I knew that I was in that pattern. So I just decided to invest in a managed fund first. And then when I had the confidence to buy, and I know that you don't talk heaps about buying individual stocks, and your core and satellite approach is amazing, and that works for a lot of people. I am quite a risky, bizarre, kind of spicy gal, if I'm being honest. And
tell me more. So
my business partner and co-host used to work as a fund manager, so I think that's why I felt more comfortable.
That's probably why you're more.
It's probably context. So yeah, so for me that was how I sort of learned about investing, was through her, and that was her job. So I trusted her and I'd learned about it, so that made sense for me. When we started the Curve Weekly podcast, which is our weekly podcast where we talk about what's going on in the news, the economy, it's similar to your Substack email, but in podcast format. One of the things that I realize is a tactic that I get really excited about, which I know should not be your overarching investing strategy, but more your satellite approach, is I've heard about a company for a long time, and then news comes out and the share price plummets, but I still understand the business, believe in the trajectory, think there's a lot of growth to be had. For me, that's a fun investment. So I like investing when shares have gone down for a reason that's not a structural issue with the company. And I did this as my first single stock investment with Netflix, and it was 3 or 4 years ago, and I doubled my money in it. And I invested, I can't remember what the news was that came out, but essentially the share price was really doing badly. And I felt really excited about the idea that this feels like
Was it when Netflix announced that they were going to buy Warren Brothers or HBO?
No, this was years ago. Okay, so it was actually, I actually have invested again recently because the share price is doing terribly. But no, this was more like 2023, I think.
I think they announced that they were going to stop you from using your account with other people, or maybe putting in ads. Was it around then?
Yeah, I think it was honestly even before that. But that's a really good example though. Both of those times, it is a new business direction. They've got a new plan. You don't know how it's going to play out, but I just had this faith in the founders, and like they've only got 10% market share or something. So they have a huge amount of growth. And I think they're growing in the game space and the live sporting. And I don't know, anyway, so recently I invested, but my first proper kind of exciting, spicy investment was then, and it was Netflix. And I put 3,000 in and it went to 6,000 with less than 12 months.
Oh my God.
And I must tell you, I thought I was the world's best investor. I was like, this
100%
investing
return.
stuff is easy. Everyone's being so dramatic and gatekeepy. So I just was very excited by that. And I think for me, I find things that make me interested, I'm more engaged with. So for me, having a consistent investment approach in, ETFs and funds and that kind of thing is important because I'm not great with consistency. So having that is really important. But where I really love investing and what brings me a lot of excitement is investing my little fun ones and things like that. I've done it a couple of times recently, and I'm sure there'll be a time where I get burned and I realize maybe that's not the smartest way to invest.
Like my Rivian stock.
Yes.
It's funny. I mean, it's so incredible that we can even sit and chat about this because how far you've come in your journey in terms of what we find a lot of with our community is we've seen an increase in a lot of women go, it's just too late for me to start. I've not grown up with this. It's just too much and it's too scary. So your journey is such a testament to I don't want to make it sound like, oh, if Soph can do it, anyone can do it. I think it's more just it's a testament that if you put your mind to it, and it's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be I want to be better with money, and then tomorrow the debt is gone and the stock portfolio has begun.
So I spoke at an event in the UK. It was the first time I spoke by myself. I actually normally get really scared of public speaking. I've gotten so much better at it. But I was asked to speak at this event with 200 women, and it was the first time that I spoke without Vic, because normally it ends up feeling like a podcast. It's if I forget what I'm talking about, she'll jump in.
Yeah.
And I was practicing what I wanted to say at home, and I was listing out the fact that I, had been in debt and where I was and where I was today. And I started crying at home while I was rehearsing. And I just thought, I got goosebumps hearing my own story. And I know that sounds kind of narcissistic, but I don't often pause and reflect on, wow, I actually have come so far. And to say, if Soph can do it, anyone can, I don't actually think is a stretch. It doesn't offend me because I could not have been more reckless or financially illiterate. And just being curious and asking questions and being around people that are open to talk about it with me and wanting to learn and get better. I think you have to want to learn.
Yeah.
If you think, oh, I should be better with my money, but you put no effort in, it's just like anything. You're not going to get good or better at anything you don't spend time on. So I just think you have to make a commitment to yourself that in the same way, maybe you want to learn more about how to eat healthier to fuel your body or how you could exercise in a bit. I mean, those are things you may not have been taught when you were younger, and you have to make an effort to learn.
It's anything, it's like a muscle.
Totally, and it's your own quality of life that you're improving. So I think hopefully if you're feeling really overwhelmed with the mountain to climb, wherever you are, you've never invested or you're in debt, it's so normal. So many people have been there, but also so many people have learned how to do it better and get out of it. Find the thing that motivates you. Sometimes I've put star charts in place for myself. As a 30-year-old woman, I've had star charts on my wall because I needed the motivation. Figure out what it is for you. It might be that you actually are addicted to buying matcha, you're addicted to spending money on things you shouldn't. Give yourself a treat or transfer money into a separate account every time you go against the grain and do something differently. Find ways to reward yourself for the change you're making, even if it's small.
I really love that. That is such a good and actionable step. And thank you so much for sharing that. I can't believe this podcast episode has flown by so quickly.
I know.
But I wanted to do a quick fire round.
Mm-hmm.
We're obviously going to have you back at some point. Favorite money book that just had such an impact?
Do you know what's so embarrassing?
Don't say you haven't read one.
I haven't.
Okay, I'm going to give you mine after this episode.
Okay, that would be great. I don't.
I was like, didn't you at least write one?
What? No, we were asked to write one, but we didn't do it in the end.
Okay.
But I think this is actually maybe a good tip for people. Sorry, this is not Quickfire, but if you don't learn by reading, which I fall asleep 3 pages in.
Okay.
So for me, podcasting is the way I learn. Find your thing. If it doesn't work for you reading, listen. If listening doesn't work, read.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay. What's your favorite fiction book? Please tell me you've got something that you've been, just a good read.
Tuesdays with Maury. It's a really good reminder that life is more than your work.
Oh, okay. I'm going to read that.
Yeah.
You're on a desert island. What is the one thing you have to bring with you?
Is this an investment or could it be a lip
No,
gloss?
It's a lip gloss. What is it, your road lip gloss? Is this new?
I'm so obsessed with it. It's actually not even mine, it's Vic's, and I found it in the podcast studio and I put it on about 70 times this podcast. Sorry, Vic.
This is mine.
Probably a pen and paper.
Pen and paper. Yeah, you're a writer.
Yeah, I'd be writing and I'd be talking about how much I need to get off the desert island.
Okay, last question. Quick fire. Try to summarize this in one sentence if you can. If you were to write a non-fiction book, what would it be on?
I would write a book on neurodiversity and how to live better with it. Live with it rather than against it all the time.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to reading the book.
I mean, I need to figure out how to do it properly first, like as in how to live better with ADHD.
But sometimes it's better to hear from someone that's learning and going through the process rather than someone that's on the other side and was like, I was like you once too, you know?
Yeah, it's a work in progress. I've booked 2 appointments this week, turned up, and they were next week. And I have an EA.
Work in progress.
Yeah, it's work in progress.
It'll be good chapter in the book.
I think so.
So thank you so much for coming on and being so vulnerable and honest and sharing such a great story. I know a lot of community are going to enjoy this. We don't really do a lot of episodes around debt and when to invest and when to get started. So this was just so fantastic. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.